We talk about integrity. We talk about doing what's right, but hungering and thirsting for it as if we haven't had a bite to eat in days. Well, that's a whole nother level. I've invited Travis Revelle and Joe Thompson back to continue our dialogue on this journey of what it means to be blessed, macarious, walking in divine joy in our leadership in business and family and in life. In this next installment of the journey, we're going to key right in, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'm Dr. Nate Salah. This is a call to leadership. Fellas, hello.
Hey.
Welcome to the new setup.
Feels great. I love it.
On our next episode, we're going to have a pan out, so everyone watching on YouTube will be able to see the full effect. Right now, they see, oh, wow, you're not in your normal table, right?
Yeah.
Your chair, which is a total departure. I mean, after almost 300 episodes.
Yeah.
We've arrived at the sofa scene. It's pretty cool.
Revolving.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice.
We are revolving.
Yeah. It's cool. And as we evolve in terms even of how we have structured our programming, a lot of folks who have been with us since the beginning have certainly seen a shift in how we're focused. And that's by design. We have embraced a journey that says, hey, you know, the podcast started out with business leadership, family leadership, life leadership, servant leadership, Jesus's model. And it was more talking about the leadership and less about Jesus himself. And you know, we made a decision last year to say, you know, he's actually at the center of all of what we teach. So let's focus on him and outpour the teaching from that. And so it's been really exciting for me. I've been blessed by it. I've been blessed that we've been doing this together. It's so life-giving. And I want to take a moment to thank you both for being on this journey.
Well, I appreciate it. I as well have enjoyed the transformation, both from a sense of podcasting and our other business, right, from G3, but also personally what it's done for me. So I welcome this evolution that we're on, and I'm really digging the couch setting.
Yeah,
it's nice. You can't see this at home, but I'm especially digging the AC.
Oh,
it's blowing really nice, and I appreciate the resituating so I can be here.
We cranked it up. Joe likes it colder, so we cranked up the AC and we put him underneath it.
It's nice. It's really nice.
Got to keep Joe happy.
No doubt. Well, we've been on this series of what it means as leaders to walk worthy. And to walk worthy is to embrace how Jesus teaches, here are the steps you can take to not get defeated when things happen, not get blown away when a circumstance arises, not lose focus when the challenges are inevitable. And not only that, but to embrace all of these things that we would consider to be the antithesis of strong leadership, flipping the total script on what it looks like to be an effective leader. It's game-changing type stuff. So the idea of blessings in and of itself, we've been talking about this for 3 episodes. Now we're on number 4. And if you haven't listened or watched the first 3, we'll make sure it's in the show notes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, and understanding how that applies in a much different way than what we've ever thought of it in our business life, and our family life, and our community life, and our spiritual life. And the idea of blessing, just to give a recap, isn't what Jesus is talking about. There's external blessings, right? But we think about, you get a promotion, you get a great parking space, you get under the AC. All of these things are, considered blessings. Like, this is wonderful furniture. We're blessed by that. It's a different type of blessing. Jesus says, okay, we've been talking about those kind of blessings for a long time, but what happens when you don't have those? Because you don't always have them.
Right.
Let's talk about your strength of character, how you get through, and not only get through, but you lead the way, pave new ways through all kinds of adversity and challenges, and reframing the entire journey of life as a leader. And so he says the blessing, the deepest sense of joy that cannot be taken is that which is what we say macarious. It is rooted in God's love and his grace that's poured out, that if you live in that day to day, no matter what happens, you're unbreakable. And guess what? I want to be that kind of leader. I want to be the kind of leader that others look at Nate Salah and say, you could drop a bomb on him. Right?
Pulls the other side of the pillow.
So number four, there's no one of these that aren't in and of themselves like, oh, okay, this is a big deal, right? They're all big deals. Number 4, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. I know you're ready for some Greek. Righteousness is a term we've heard of, right? We know it's honoring God in how we act with integrity. We've talked about integrity on the show. It's honoring God in how we stand for justice and virtue. That's great. I want to talk a little bit about the hunger and thirst part. I think that deserves some unpacking as we get into our conversation and you weigh in. The terms that Jesus uses for hunger and thirst, the word picture is dire hunger and thirst. As if you have been going through a desert and there's nothing you want more than one drop of water. Have you ever been in a situation to where you're so thirsty? You're so thirsty. You're like, I have just got to get something to drink, wherever. We were just last night, my wife and I were driving to a store, and she's like, I'm thirsty. I'm so thirsty. Like, you want me to stop and get you something from Deerberg's or from the store or wherever? Oh, can it wait? Like, I'm really thirsty. Like, that's the thing. And it's like, that's not even, I should say, a drop of the depth of what he's talking about. And there's stories where people have been lost, whether it's in the woods or in the mountains or in the desert, and they're so parched. And this is what Jesus is saying: that your hunger and thirst for what is right in the sight of God, that virtue, that honor, that praiseworthy sense of the principles that you uphold, you want it so badly that there's nothing else that's more important at this moment. Because right then and there, unless you drink water or you get food, what happens to you?
You die.
You die. So what is he saying here? It needs to be as important to us as what? Life.
Yeah.
That kind of like adds some context to reading that. How many times have we read the Beatitudes? You're like, oh yeah, I want to do what's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Of course. You want to do what's right.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh.
No, it shows that it's almost a desperate need.
Yeah. A desperate need.
We've heard these all of our lives. Can you imagine hearing it like this for the first time? Like without the precursor of growing up Christian. Like you're just sitting on a hillside and this is coming at you. It's got to be just, you can see why it was so mind-blowing for the people around him at the time. Like thirst for righteousness, as if you're going to die without it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
intense.
Intense, powerful message.
Yes.
In our own lives, I know you have, well, maybe not as much Travis, somewhat Travis, but maybe not as much. But Joe, you and I have been unrighteous from time to time.
Yeah. I get an unrighteous feel coming from over there, though.
Is there some unrighteousness?
Just we feel it.
Travis is a law-abiding citizen, for the most part. You think? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I think there was maybe a time.
Maybe a time.
Was
there ever a time when you were unrighteous, Travis?
I mean,
among 1.3 million people.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm sure there have been times, as Joe says, before being holy, right? BBH, right? There was some times, right, that I probably I wouldn't be proud, but I don't know if it's at a level where I would be incarcerated.
Okay. All right. So that makes one of us. All right. So one of us in this nice, beautiful, plush room has stood in front of multiple judges, and I'm not saying that out of bragging rights at all. And I'm working on the book. By the way, I'm working on the book.
Yeah,
our first installment of the series, and our first book, Radical Purpose. From the dissertation, taking that from moving it to popular press on walking in purpose. And I talk a little bit about that in the book, of risk-taking, independent spirit that I had my whole life. And without this kind of direction, it led to a lot of really just foolish decisions in life, right? A lot of unrighteous decisions without having the stability and the authority and really the leadership. This is one of the reasons why I've pursued leadership so wholeheartedly my whole life, is because there was a lack of it that was effective in my life. And it was so necessary, so needed. I just longed for it, right? Whether it's, different stepdads, or, my dad being incarcerated, or, mom just having lots of troubles. And it's like looking for someone who I can look up to, who can take me to a place that doesn't lead me to a dark one-way road to nowhere. Because that's a lot of what a lot of people experience.
No, I think, we talk about it all the time, right? Like, the world needs strong leaders, and that doesn't necessarily come with a title. It doesn't come with a position in a company. Anybody can be a leader in their community, in their families, right? Like, anybody can take this blueprint. I mean, the Beatitudes to me are really, like, as we get into it, it's a blueprint for living a good life, right? Like, it's a blueprint that helps, if you think about it, if you are filled with Macarius spirit, right? Like, you're going to have times that are depressing in your life, but I don't feel like you're going to be depressed, right? Like, because you have this other thing that you're focusing on. And if you take these principles and you apply them to your life, I'd be willing to bet that your life would inherently be better, right? You would be a better person. You would be a better father, a better partner, whoever you're with, right? A better leader. But I think the world, right, is a crazy, scary place. And maybe it's always been a crazy, scary place, but we just get, with technology, we get notifications of everything that's happening all over the world, and it's always the bad stuff that's happening all over the world. But this generation, our generation, the generation behind us, like, this is a pivotal point in history, right? And not just biblical history, but just history. And it's going to take everyday people to just say, you know what, like, enough.
Right.
Enough. Like, we need to live life. We need to do it a little bit differently. We've done it for a long time, a certain way, and it's just, it's out of control.
Yeah.
And I think that, this is a blueprint. If nothing else, you're a better person.
Right.
Even if you don't change the world, you're changing your world, And I think that that's what I'm really getting out of this, is just, like, Jesus laid down a blueprint to live a happy, healthy, impactful life. And if 5 out of 10 people followed that,
Lights out.
This world would be a completely, totally different place.
Yeah.
To touch a little on what you said about having leaders around you growing up. I'm sure in some instances there are natural born leaders, people who are just prone to like make the right choices in that throughout life. But for the most part, leadership is learned. Like it's a learned behavior, and you have to learn how to do it, like how to be a good leader. And going through these Beatitudes like this is the blueprint for being a good leader. There's 1,000 things out there published on leadership and yeah. But what would be more impactful as a leader if you went and read like 1,000 management books, or if you studied the Beatitudes and then you actually practiced them in the way that they were meant to be practiced? Like now you're molding yourself to be a leader when you keep those in mind as your decision making, because leadership is decision making, right? Like leaders are always at the crossroads of, do I do this or do I do that? And then history decides whether they were right or wrong later on. But I think if you apply what we're learning, now and going over now, if you apply that to your leadership decision making, it's going to have greater wealth for you than I think any other printed material out there you could read.
You talk about decision making, and so it reminds me of responsibility. And another way to say responsibility is having an ability to respond, right? You have this ability to give an answer, and that is a decision, right? You've made a decision at that point. And this Beatitude especially is about decision making. I mean, it's critical. Some of the Beatitudes are situational, right? And it's in a certain situation, I express meekness or I don't express it, right? Because it's not necessary in every single situation. But the hunger and thirst for righteousness would come up a lot. It's not like, oh yeah, at some point. It's like daily. It's happening all the time. And whether it's with our relationship with God, to seek God first and crave his presence, align with his heart, not just for knowledge, but for that transformational decision making. When it comes to our families, there's going to be times where we may be standing alone. And the question is, do I stand for what is right in the sight of God's eyes, no matter what happens? That's happened to me. You lose people. But guess what? I'd rather stay focused on God and what God wants for my life. People will come around if they choose, right? That's between them and God. Or community. Let's social, civic justice, right? I mean, talk about a hot topic.
Right. Especially now, right? Because social justice has such a nomenclature for very specific items. And I think it's broader than just the few items that people talk about, right? Like true social justice is looking at the entire population, not segmenting certain populations, right? But looking at everybody. I think that this one in business, this Beatitude really applies to leadership and business a lot, right? I think there's a lot that you can kind of pull out from it. For me, if you look at, hunger for righteousness in business, it really means you care about doing things the right way rather than the easy way. And I think that that's something that happens when you talk about this is something that comes up every single day. Every single day, there's a decision in business that you have to make, and you can choose to do it the right way, or you can choose to do it the easy way, right? I mean, that's without a doubt, that happens every single day. So resist cutting corners, manipulating numbers or compromising values to win a deal. I mean, how often do people look at it and say, oh man, just look, you were in the mortgage business, right? Geez, how many times did numbers get manipulated in the mortgage business so somebody could get a house? Just every single day, this Beatitude is you have the ability to practice it, right? You have the ability to choose to do it.
And so that's a good segue, because as we talk about the business of it, and even in, we're business guys. What keeps us from doing things cutting corners? Like, what are some of the reasons why someone listening would agree and say, yeah, that's why I've cut corners. That's why I haven't done what's righteous. What are some of the standout ones? I've got some on my list.
You mean, why do people cut corners?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's easy, because it's faster, because they feel like they're going to get a quick result.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? They might.
Yep.
But what they're sacrificing is a short-term win for long-term sustainability.
Yes. And I think that some of that's short-sighted in terms of, like, it's not, you're not thinking far enough out.
You're not.
It's lack of discernment.
Yes. That's right.
Because everyone's going to be faced with a situation where they're under pressure. You have to hit the numbers. You're under pressure. And sometimes an opportunity comes up where, if I don't practice righteousness, I could maybe hit these numbers a little better. And, there's a lot of pressure on you to do that. So I see why someone might take that, that choice. Because everyone in business, sometimes you're faced with a problem where there's like a bad decision and a worse decision, right? Like, the opportunity doesn't present itself to make the fully righteous decision, but you still have to discern between the two and kind of go with
the lesser
evil. Yeah.
Pretty much every election I've ever voted in. Right. No, I think a lot of it comes from, look, we've all run businesses, right? And there's a million things that are coming at you every single day. You want to just make a decision and move on, right? You want to fix a problem and move on. And I think that most entrepreneurs, right, like, they look at, all right, what's the easiest solution to this problem, because I have 15 other problems that I need to fix, And so I think not taking the time, right, to really think about. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't really have a long-term vision, right? They haven't structured themselves to say, here's where I want to be 5 years from now. So here's where I need to be a year from now. Here's what I need to be doing today to hit that goal a year from now. They haven't done that work. And so they're kind of just a ship at sea floating around, right? And here comes a big wave. How do I get away from that wave? But in my life, the times where I have not been righteous in my decisions, and this was previously to even considering this beatitude in a business perspective, but just looking back on my life, whenever I've taken a shortcut or I've tried to go for fast money, every time it has been the worst case scenario for me afterwards. After that decision, even if I would, you know what I mean? Like, whatever fear I had, losing a job, right? Or not making rent, or not being able to pay my mortgage, or not having any money coming in, right? To make a decision to go the fast route to cover myself. Years later, that decision has come back to haunt me in terrible ways, right? And at that point, if I would have made the right decision and something bad would have happened, I would have already rebounded, right? I would have already been in a much better spot. But now I'm dealing with something that decision that I made years ago that isn't even in my purview anymore, right? And it comes back to haunt you. And I think that is just, that's the nature of running a business a lot of times, is you're in survival mode so much that you're just trying to survive, right? And what God is telling us here is that it goes back to another, right? Have faith. You know what I mean? Like, have faith that if you make the right decision, even if in the short term it ends up being wrong, in the long term, you have to have faith that you're going to be okay. He's going to make it right. But a lot of people, right? Like, it goes back to what we say. They want the control, right? Because they're the entrepreneur, so they're not going to give up control. They're not going to be meek, right? They're not going to have a lot of discernment because it's just rapid fire. How do I put this fire out and move forward? How do I make this dollar and move forward? and that doesn't lead to long-term sustainable growth in a business. And as that individual, it does not lead to a healthy, long-term, happy life either.
Or someone that's going to be followed long term either. I mean, eventually the cards will fall, the dominoes will fall. Like, I mean, just go down a list of every, major story on that you see about a Bernie Madoff or somebody else.
Enron.
Exactly. Go down a list. Tyco, WorldCom. I mean, we have Sarbanes-Oxley now just because of that. Big words, right? Just for all of these leaders who are like, okay, shortcut it. Let's make some quick cash. Who cares about integrity? Who cares about doing what's virtuous? Let's just scam people. I used to watch American Greed all the time, and way back in the day. And I've concluded that many of those situations on that program, the greed is a disease. It is a disease that people cannot. They almost like it just takes over their lives, and because people have money. It's not even just about.
It's like alcoholism, right? Like greed is like you said. It's one of those things, and we talk about it in G3, right? Like, you try to fill yourself with everything worldly, and part of it, I think a lot of those guys, and I've been around a lot of guys like that, right? Like, it's the scoreboard of their life is their bank account, right? And how much money they have, and whether they have 100 million or they have 10 billion, it doesn't matter, right? Like, they just want more because that's all they know how. That's the only way they can satisfy themselves and feel good about themselves is by having more and more and more.
And metric. It's their number one metric, right? And so we talk about metrics. And so for us in our community, especially there's one metric in G3. One. Just one metric. And it's one sentence. It's just one sentence, and everyone who is committed to following Christ knows the sentence because they've either heard it or they've read it, and it speaks to them. And the only metrics that matters, the only sentence that matters is, well done, good, and faithful servant. That's it. And if that's the only metric that matters, the next question is, what are the steps that I take to get to the well done, good, and faithful servant? And one of the critical ones is walking in godly integrity and virtue and righteousness. And I can't help but to believe that God will honor the second part of that when we do, for they will be filled. They'll be satisfied. We'll be satisfied. And that is the satisfaction that you will never thirst again, is what Jesus says. You won't thirst after all that cash or all those accolades or all of those things that you thought were going to quench your thirst, but all it does is leave you thirstier and thirstier and thirstier.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial mindset in the beginning. Like, we're talking about big decision making here, but let's think about like when we started. So like if you started with a service or a widget or whatever, and you're just starting, you're only thinking of one thing. Will people buy this? How do I sell this? Right? Because you just may be a one-man show in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. You just may be one guy and you got your thing when you're trying to sell it, and that's all you're focused on, right? And at some point, as it's selling and as you're growing and as you're bringing in other people, you have to start implementing like the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy at that point, you're going to drift one way or the other. And I think it becomes habitual almost. Like if you have a quick gain on a bad decision, you're going to make that bad decision over and over again, right? And it's hard to discern between what's best for my business in the beginning, right? Because you're just like, man, I just hope people buy this thing. And then once it starts growing and you're selling it, now you're going to be faced with bigger and bigger decisions, because as your company grows and you add people to it, you're now making decisions for individuals that are around you. Like your decisions are going to affect them. And I think, starting out entrepreneurs, this will lay a foundation for them. G3 can lay a foundation for you as an early entrepreneur to make those right decisions now that are going to last you and build a top quality business in the end, instead of always having to feel like we just need to sell this. Because it's a mindset we all get in. And as you sell and sell and sell, greed can set in. And like, well, man, I'll just rinse and repeat and just keep doing this over and over. But there comes a time where you have to consider, what kind of leader am I going to be? Because when you first start out, you're leading nothing, right? You're leading a dream. You just hope it gets done. As you grow, though, it's important to develop those leadership skills. And where do you go for that? Like, if someone said, hey, Travis, go out and learn to be a leader.
Right.
And these are the resources you have now. G3 is nowhere to be seen, right? You're going to dive into books. You're going to look at, even if you go that route of, I want to follow Christ, and you look at those things, no one is going to challenge you to be holy. For one. Right. No one's going to do that. No book's going to open with that, because
Or be righteous.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
No one is going to say, hey, start making business decisions based off the concept of these Beatitudes. Nowhere is that going to be found. Right.
Right.
So I think our goal in helping to build better leaders and trying to always be better, I'm always trying to improve my own leadership skills. If I'm teaching someone about a leadership process, they know that like I'm working on it as well. And I think that should be something very attractive to someone just starting out. I think I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I see them just starting out, and I remember that feeling of like angst and like, I get this done. And but you get a sense of relief when you're like, oh, you know what? I can implement meekness when I need it. I can implement, mourning when I need it. And this is just another tool in the Beatitude belt of tools that now it's, you search for righteousness.
And it's a culture. It's a culture, like in business, you're describing a culture that's being created. Mm-hmm. And we as leaders, we start the culture. We set the tone. We lay the foundation for our organizations, what that culture is. And so everyone is watching us, not only what we say, but of course, just as importantly, if not more, what we do to get that culture fired up. Because eventually the culture begins to have a presence and an identity of itself, and it eventually can outgrow you.
It should outgrow.
Yes. And so that said, like a child, you better set it up right.
Listen, in one of my other companies, over 500 employees, right? 35 states. Our tagline for our company is culture is everything. Like, that is our tagline. It is on every piece of merch that we do. It is every single employee that comes on. It is, I don't want to say beat into them, but like the culture is everything. And how you start, I'm going to tell you something. It is almost impossible if you're in a company 2-3 years in to try to change the culture that had already been created. It is almost impossible unless you literally let go of everybody and hire new people, because people will always hold on to whatever their first experience is with that organization. So when it comes to culture, this is something from a business standpoint that is right next to, do you have a product that can sell, right? Do you have something that is needed in the marketplace? Directly underneath that is build a culture in your organization that's driving everybody towards what that goal is. And to do it in a healthy, supportive, the culture in our company was not based on the Beatitudes, but as I'm sitting here going through this, there's so much that we just incorporated because it was the right thing to do. right? Like this culture that we have in one of my companies, like this is very similar to this, right? And what was interesting is we have a new market that's opening, and one store, right? And so it's hard when you've got multiple stores across the country, and you're kind of, you need to transplant that culture into a new area, right? People are different in different parts of the country, but I'm in the store. It's been open for 3 months now, and they just, like, my number one takeaway, the store is doing great, it's profitable, people are great, everything. But the number one thing I took back to my partners is they've got the culture. Like, it is there. Like it's as alive there as it is anywhere. And that's one of the things I'm most proud about. And so when you're talking about a new entrepreneur and utilizing this is lights out. This is a no-brainer, right? This is creating culture is paramount to your success. And understanding what your culture is usually the problems that people have because they've never done that before, right? Single entrepreneur, you're selling something. I'm sure you worked for companies before. You know what felt right in a company. You know what felt bad in a company, but you don't have an overall vision of what your culture and your organization should be. I mean, it takes a lot of maturity in business to understand the nuances of that. How we're hiring people, how we're onboarding people, like all these things matter. You follow these, you've got a great culture. At the end of the day, your company may be mediocre, but you're going to have people who want to work for you. You're going to have people who will die for you. You know what I mean? Like they will lay it on the line for you. Like they'll be there for you in the trenches. And I'll take that over an unbelievable product and a terrible culture in an organization. Culture is everything.
You know, what's fascinating as you're saying all that, it just reminds me also of you just talked about short-term, long-term wins and things like that, right? You know, you're talking about the different aspects of it and how all of these pieces that we're talking about, the righteousness, you know, where integrity thrives, where ethics are protected, where truth is celebrated in an organization because of your commitment to it. It's game changer in all the relationships and your team members and your clients, and it changes the dynamic of how everything functions. Doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. But what happens when you do? That changes I just had a recent situation with a client, long-term client, and a couple team members had some hiccups, and there was it was messy and complex, and there were some issues on our end. And I communicate with the client. They know my stance on these principles, and I know their character as well. And I said, look, you tell me whatever it is that you want. I'll honor. Now that's going out on a limb.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what the client said? No. You pray about it. Whatever it is that you do, I'll accept it as fair, and I won't say a word. Bro. I mean, I was floored. I was like, okay.
I also put the pressure back on you.
True story, right? True story. And I said, I'll do that. And so here's what happened. I, of course, as much fairness as I could, go over the situation and say, okay, what's a dollar value of making this make sense for everyone? And then after I come up with that, lay it at God's feet. And even on this morning, and the client was like, just no timelines, whenever, just let me know. And so I was driving in and I said, Lord, I just want to hear from you with this number. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything until it's confirmed through whatever means. Maybe you'll illuminate me to some other piece to this experience, discernment, wisdom, so that I can walk in your character and represent you and your righteousness as if it was the last drop of water I had. Like, it's a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's something that I've been growing in, right? We're all growing in this. If you're listening, none of us have arrived. This isn't like, hey, you know,
yeah,
it's an orientation,
it's not
right?
A destination.
At the same time, man, it's so incredibly liberating because I used to be a hustler. I got to get mine, I grew up in the 90s, right? The old rap era, all that, you got to get yours, I got to get mine, right? I grew up in all of that, and I thought that's what it was about. I thought it had to be about, hey, I got to make money, cut corners, do stuff illegal, whatever I got to do. It's like, oh, well, that doesn't lead me to where I really want and need to go. And now I got the infinite game. That's a short game. I don't want to call it the long game. It's the infinite game. We're playing the infinite game now, fellas.
But look at the message you were getting as a young person. Like, that was the message you got as a young person. Can you imagine if there was a resource to give you a message, like this when you're a young person?
So you're saying go to growgivego.com and get that message.
I don't want to be flagrant about it. But if you're listening to this, you're looking for something, right? And you're looking for something that I think we've found, and now we're trying to share that, right? Because that message you get as a young person, or you're not even a young entrepreneur, just a young person. Like, look at how music and that affects
100%.
Culture, and politics affect culture. And it's hard to find the right message in there. And the weird thing is that this was delivered to us over 2,000 years ago.
Right.
It's
not new.
And it's not new, but it's forgotten, it's no longer understood.
It needs to be fresh.
And there's no growth in leadership anywhere. You don't look around and go, oh my gosh, look at all these leaders, great leaders sprouting up everywhere.
Bro, crisis in leadership. This is all I heard for the last 20 years of leadership research that I did. It's the number one conversation in leadership circles, whether the scholarly or non-academic. It's a crisis in leadership. And it's around us everywhere. Like, that could be a whole series. And
that was really our original thought about this whole thing, was crisis of leadership. Like, how do we help?
Mm-hmm. Where do we stand in the gap?
Like, even the early podcasts that we all were on, we talked about, how important that was.
Right. Yeah, leadership.
Now we're delivering that message of, okay, here's the leadership to follow. This is the blueprint for good leadership. Right?
Amen. If you, Travis, if someone listening is like, okay, I've not always stood in integrity and righteousness, but what you're saying is compelling, and my business needs it. Where do I start? Because we got a lot of stuff in my business that we've been doing dirty.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the first place it starts always is with that person, right? That person who says, listen, my company, it's your company, right? So the first thing you got to do is you got to take a really hard self-inventory, self-checklist, and you got to say, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, nobody else is going to hear it, but you got to be honest with yourself. You've got to understand where you are to understand where you need to go, right? You can't start a plan unless you're real honest about where you currently sit. And then it is fairly simple. We have gone over 4 so far, a few more left to go. Follow along, implement it, start with the first one. But the thing is Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to change your culture. You're not going to change your business in a day. But what you can do is the next decision that you make for your company, think about, how do I make it in alignment with Jesus's vision and Jesus's blueprint? And then the next decision, do the same thing. And the next decision, do the same thing. And you will start to build a habit of using this as a guidepost in the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
But the first step is self-inventory. Yeah. Where am I lacking? And that's where people have the hardest problems. You know what I mean? Like, really being honest with themselves.
That is absolutely true. Like, you nailed it. Being honest with yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've been called in for consulting, and we go around the table and everybody tells me how great they're doing.
Then why am I here?
Exactly.
Then why are you hiring a consultant?
We've talked about it before. Being honest with where you're currently sitting, not only in your business, but like in your life as a leader, decisions you're making. The more honest you can be with that, the easier and quicker your jump start will be to get to the next level.
And I think, again, it comes back to fear. People are afraid to be honest with themselves, right? Because they're going to be depressed. But it shouldn't be depressing, because just because that's who you are today doesn't mean that's who you're going to be tomorrow, right? But you have to understand who you are today so that you can be a better person tomorrow.
It will draw the honesty out of people around you too.
Yes.
Because everybody's kind of wearing a mask, especially at work, right? But like if you're just raw and open about your life, your feelings, what you've been through, that employee or coworker or whoever, they'll do the same thing.
Yep.
Now they're in a safe place.
I've got another little tip. The other thing that you could do as a leader, right? Like, walk into your company, have an all hands meeting, stand up there and say, we haven't been doing business the right way. I don't feel good about how we've been doing business, and I want to do it better. Here's what I haven't done well as a leader, right? Throw yourself out there. And I guarantee when you go around the room, everybody's going to feel more comfortable with saying, well, here's the things that I see, right? Here's the things that I see that our company is doing and not doing. But I think it's going to start with that individual who's listening to this right now, who needs to just pull over, stop, flip down the mirror, take a look at themselves, and just have a very honest self-assessment on where they currently sit to understand what they need to change to be the person they really want to be.
You just mentioned the first two Beatitudes in summary, really. And it's it's what we've been talking about, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Start with a little bit of humility and dependence, right? And say, okay, you know what? Look in the mirror. I don't have it all figured out. It's okay, right? And then the next step is sharing and saying, look, we don't have it all together. Let's find out. And you watch all these shows. You've seen all the reality shows on, like when people come into companies, and it's a lot of the first steps, right? It's a lot of the first steps. Let's break it down, guys. Let's break it down. Where are weak spots, right? So that we can shore them up and figure out where we need interdependence. Hello, right? Because we're not islands. We've got. We're halfway there. And the next one is going to be one of my favorites that Mr. Miyagi penned.
Wax on, wax on.
Bessie, it's for the weak. Right. Blessed are the merciful. I can't wait to jump into that. Mercy more than sympathy. And what it means in our lives as leaders to exert the highest level of grace and compassion that's been bestowed already on us, and the release and the joy, and of course, the worthiness we find in leadership. We did it our first episode on the new sofas. Did you get enough AC, bro?
Oh, it's nice. No complaints. Nice and cool.
It's freezing in here.